All right, thank you for staying with Newsnight. Let's start that conversation, yes, on the political situation. We're calling it the Uhuru succession, and we're talking to political analysts this time. We're not talking to politicians. Let's hear their views and hear your views as well on 22422 at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Newsnight and at Waiga Mora as well. Let me introduce my guest one more time. Tom Wolf is here, independent research analyst. Asante sana for making time. David Makali is also here with us, a political analyst. Thank you so much. Haman Manyora, political analyst, is also here with us in studio. We're still waiting for Joshua Kipto, Speaker, Nandi County Assembly, is running into a bit of an issue. If he shows up, we'll talk to him as well. Prof, I'll start with you on this situation. What is your assessment of the current political situation in the country? Are we, as it stands, are we likely to see any major political upsets in Kenya, say an unlikely candidate voted in?
Yeah, only recently, I think that was on Sunday, you hosted Jimmy Wanjigi in this, I think, this studio.
Yeah.
And he put up a show that surprised many people. If you look at what people are saying in social media. So it's likely people like those can come up. And again, it must also be remembered that Raila Odinga is yet to declare. So these are some of the things we are expecting. And perhaps the most far-reaching development would be if the former NASA principals were to get together and support perhaps Raila. That would be kind of earth-shaking. I think these are the things we are expecting so far. Again, maybe people are also worried that the war between Uhuru and Ruto could get uglier.
Yeah.
And these are sort of some of the things people are thinking of right now.
Would the political arithmetic change in any way if those you're calling the former NASA principals support one of their own instead of ODM leader Raila Odinga, say yes. Musalia?
Yeah, it could be any one of them, but it's unlikely it can be anybody other than Raila.
Okay. Makali, is there any likely upset in the 2022 arithmetic?
Well, first of all, I don't think that the narrative that has persisted in this country, that this race is between Raila Odinga and William Ruto, is sustainable or credible. You know, I don't expect any new entrant to the political, to the presidential race, apart from the ones who have shown interest, the ones in Oka, Raila, you know, Muturi and Ruto. But I am not very optimistic about the Oka team, for example, joining Raila, being bulldozed into supporting him. I see that as very unlikely. I think each of these candidates is digging in, and the moment they say they're not running, yeah. Their fortunes also decline. So I don't see them, especially the Oka team, agreeing to support Baba in this race.
Yeah. In
my view, I think it's going to be Baba who is going to support any other candidate and not them supporting him.
So you don't think he will run as an individual?
Actually, I hold the view that Baba is not going to run in this election, which is not a very popular view, but I have my reasons for thinking that this is not his time. And if he has read and looked at the horizons, the sitting of the arrangements do not favor him to make another stab at the presidency.
If he doesn't run now, he'll be 81 in the next election.
It's not that he must run. I mean, he has run enough times, and he must get to a point where you say, I've tried this thing, and this time the stars are not in my favor. In fact, if you look at it, of all the times that Baba has run, this is the time that he is going to be struggling to put together a credible bid. Okay. And so why should he persist and end up worse than he has previously performed and go home with a poor record? I think he has a lot of people he can back and achieve his ambitions through. Okay.
Tom, you've been carrying out research for a while. Have Kenyans changed over time? Do you expect any political upsets in 2022, or are we as predictable as we've always been?
Well, the challenge with your question, Trevor, is to define this term upset. If we go back to one of the questions you asked a moment ago, and that my friends were also addressing, whether there's any room in the evolving scenario for a complete outsider, like Donald Trump was in 2016. Or we could even say Jimmy Wanjigi, I mean, somebody who would be completely new.
Yeah.
I think, again, the question is, how much room does that person need to have an impact? One of the issues that came up a couple of weeks ago on Daybreak with your colleague, Sam Kituku, was very briefly mentioned, and that is, if these people who are unhappy with the candidacy of the deputy president cannot agree on who it should be, whether it's Raila backing one of the Oka people or them agreeing to back Raila or whatever, how many candidates might there be in the race, and how much of the vote would all of these other candidates have to get in order to force a runoff contest?
Yeah.
And if there is a runoff contest, even if the DP came out first, would that really change the dynamics? I'm not aware. I haven't studied the academic literature in how many contests in Africa there have been runoffs. I know there have been some, but we've never had one here. So I think if people can't put their egos down or their ambitions down, if there are enough opinion polls showing that people are getting 4, 5, 6, 7%,
yeah.
But they still stay in the race, as Kalonzo Musyoka did in 2007, when all the polls were showing him with only about 10%, but even under pressure from some people for him to declare whether he would support Kibaki or Raila, he stayed in the race.
Yeah.
Of course, in those days, under the old constitution, we didn't have a 50% plus one requirement. But the one other thing, so as I say, this situation, it seems to me, as of now, is wide open. We did see a poll that was published a week ago by Radio Africa, or done by Radio Africa and published in the Star,
yeah.
which showed the deputy president at 43% and Raila only at 14%. There was quite a few, I think 20%, who wouldn't answer the question, said they wouldn't vote, were undecided, and so on. But I think that enforces what Makali just said, that Raila surely, even without that poll from Radio Africa, would have access to information about the level of his own viability. Two of the very quick things, and that is, in all of this discussion of reforms, whether under BBI or any others, one thing that I've not heard mentioned by anyone is the effort that was made in several other African countries, some quite close to Kenya, to remove term limits so that the president could have a third or unlimited number of terms. That has never been mentioned. And I think that, notwithstanding the arguments about the judiciary and the BBI proposed reforms and so on and so forth, I think that gives credit to the stability of Kenya's constitution. And it may be the case, again, I haven't checked, but Uhuru Kenyatta could be the youngest president in Africa ever to retire under a 2-term limit, which again, I think gives acknowledgement of the strength of the current constitutional order.
Okay. Makali, I see you disagree, Zama.
Well, I'm just, I don't know where Tom is fishing this thing of removal of term limits from, because I think that is not even on the cards.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's remarkable.
Definitely it's not on the cards in our current constitutional dispensation and the political mood in the country. I mean, I don't see any prospect that
either do I. I mean, I think
we can extend the president's term. He can probably come back in any other format in the executive, perhaps as a cabinet secretary or something of the sort, if he is really ambitious. But to extend his term, really, I don't think he even thinks about it himself. Even when he was pushing the BBI, that wasn't his narrative. I think the idea was that he would maybe, speculation was that he would reconfigure himself into something else and maybe come in as a prime minister or somebody who is close to his family, inherit the mantle and come into government in some form. So I don't see that prospect really anywhere in the horizons.
All right. Prof, let's talk about these formations that we're seeing now. And one of them is Oka, and you mentioned them. That is One Kenya Alliance. Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, Gideon Moi, Moses Wetangula. They say they're choosing the presidential candidate in October. Who should it be out of them, in your own political analysis? Who would garner the maximum votes, and who should be the running mate?
Yeah, but allow me just some little leg room to respond to what my friend David Makali has said. A few months, 1 or 2, 3 months after the 2017 election, I was doing an interview with an international radio station. And they were asking me, what next for Raila? And I asked him, what do you mean? And said, it's over for him now. What do you think? I told him, a person who can write off Raila must be a person who doesn't understand Raila and Kenyan politics. So I can see my friend Makali making the same mistake. Hardly a month or 2 later, Raila was calling the shots. And since then, He's the second most powerful politician in this country when people are written off.
Your interview was before the handshake?
To write off Raila. Raila is not a man now. That is a political genius, my friend. So really, if you remove Raila from the political landscape today, there will certainly be almost no election, no politics. William Ruto will take a holiday just to come for swearing in. He wouldn't even campaign. As to Oka, I hold the view, and this will time will bear me out. I hold the view that they are certainly going nowhere. And they know it. And they are my friends. And we talk. And I tell them as much, that this contest is between Raila and Ruto. In between, there's no room for anybody else, for now. The only upset, like you ask, could come from the mountain. It is possible somebody from the mountain. Because the mountain people, seeing all these shenanigans going on, could decide they are getting back into the game. And that could cause a lot of upset. But if Oka were to insist they are going to run, the most they can do is a Kalonzo Mudavadi ticket. They won't go in it alone. It'll be Kalonzo with Mudavadi. Yeah. Most likely Kalonzo on top of the ticket, deputized by Mudavadi. I am sure Gideon Moe cannot be part of that game. Absolutely not.
Why not?
He's not even part of that Oka thing. This Oka, I've told people, is a holding ground. Yeah. You know, a holding ground. In the fullness of time, these people in the holding ground will now be herded to where they belong. And they will go to Raila's corner. This is what's going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makali, is there no wiggle room for any other person?
I am tempted to believe that Hamman has been listening too much to stories from State House.
I like that.
That seems to be the script that is being executed in some way. But I want to remind Manyora that, and he has mentioned something very significant. In fact, the game changer in this thing is going to be the candidate from Mount Kenya. And you know who is coming from Mount Kenya. I mean, Hamman, without going far. The emergence of Justin Muturi in this whole game, and if he persists and gets traction within the mountain region, will totally disarrange the political game, including to the very great detriment of Hasla, because Hasla's success is really pegged on getting the support of the mountain region. Once that is pulled away from him, in fact, you go back to then each of these candidates' bedrock region of support, you find Hasla will also be completely vanquished. He has a lot of support from around the country, but if candidates, for example, if Musalia were to run from Western, Muturi is running from the mountain region, where does that leave Raila and his support? He has a constituency that's national, but again, it's completely diminished. So you end up having almost a four-way kind of contest. And I've not mentioned other people. I mean, Kalonzo Musyoka is there, Mukhisa Kituyi is there. When all these candidates come together in different formations, the whole political game is going to be rearranged. And I see this happening before January next year. So the appearance of Hasla running away with this thing is totally an illusion, because the opposition against him has not been formed, so to speak. And just to respond to Hamman's feeling that Raila is unassailable. You see, if I was advising Raila, I would ask him, what are his real chances of success? For example, if Oka does not support him, where does he get the numbers to actually make a serious stab that can even disturb Hasla? I don't see it. And if that were the consideration, then I would say, I'd rather not go out in a disgraceful manner, having lost to a junior politician in the name of William Ruto or any of these others, because all of them, anyway, are his political juniors. Why would he go out losing again to a political junior as he did in the last two elections to Uhuru Kenyatta? He's already achieved a certain stature that he should retire with.
But remember what I was saying before about that discussion that I heard on Daybreak about a possible runoff. You may be very correct that if Oka puts up their own candidate or pair and Raila stands against the DP, nobody may get the 50%. Then, but let's say Raila comes in second. What would these other people do who were all together with him in NASA last time? Are they so bitter that they would just tell their supporters not to vote, or they would just stay out? Would they even be so cruel as to support the DP against Raila in a runoff because of the resentment from various disagreements that have taken place, sharing of the political party's fund and so on, many other things? What would happen in that scenario? I think that opens up a lot of questions. But when we're also thinking about candidates, as you know as well, if not better than I, these undertakings are extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So in addition to popularity in an opinion poll, you have to look at bank accounts, not just theirs, but their actual and potential financiers.
Yeah.
Who has got the money to actually put up a credible national campaign? I think it's a very limited few, or who's got that amount of finance.
Yeah.
And there are some people who might not be credible candidates themselves, but if they were willing to support somebody else, then the money would be there.
Yeah.
But without that money, they can't go anywhere. I mean, Kenyan politics has become so monetized.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to even 20 years ago when we had the 2002 election, the change election from Kanu's monopoly to, Kibaki under NARC.
Yeah.
We had so much motivation. People were volunteering, doing all kinds of things without money. People in Mombasa, where I was an election observer, were saying, "Kula kwa Kanu, lakini kura kwa NARC." I mean, money because people wanted change.
Yeah.
But really, what's the policy, or what's the motivation for people now to want something different than what the current status quo is? As of now, it seems to me, the Hustler Nation has captured that, becoming the de facto opposition when you've got the de jure, the official opposition,
yeah,
basically working with government. So without an alternative vision coming from where, I can't see,
yeah,
I think the capacity for raising the kind of finance to fund viable national presidential campaigns is very limited.
It's limited. Yeah. Prof.
You see, Trevor, David McCarthy ought to understand, this country is really, in terms of votes, we have like 50-50. And this in 2017, 2013, 2007 was more or less the same. Raila with his 50%, Kibaki with his 50%. Of course, then you tip here and there for somebody to get a winner. But basically divided almost in equal. If that were the case, if that is going to be the case, then you need to ask yourself, 2017 and now, what is the situation, or what has changed? If Ruto is very powerful, it means he will have the votes he got in 2017 with Uhuru Kenyatta. And that seems to be the case so far. Because then he has Mount Kenya, okay? And then he has his other places. Now, you would argue, because Raila is going to lose part of Western and part of, almost likely the entire Ukambani,
yeah,
then you can see Raila losing. But how is that going to obtain? The answer is certainly no, because this election will be decided on the mountain. It's Mount Kenya that they will decide this election. And it's a very simple thing to look at.
yeah.
For Ruto to win, he needs the entire Mount Kenya vote, with whatever else he can get. The situation now would appear to be favoring him. Then the question you must now ask, David McCarthy, are you sure this situation will obtain up to August next year? To say yes is to imply,
yeah, that
Raila, now without restrictions that he used to go through, cannot get 10% of the mountain vote. You know, there was so much put in roadblocks in his way, including being demonized, and there was a Kikuyu candidate. So it was very difficult for. Are you saying when all that is removed, well, let me finish, that he cannot get 10% of the mountain vote? I find that to be a little difficult to believe.
Yeah.
Secondly, for that situation to obtain, you will be telling me that when Uhuru goes to seek for votes from Mudavadi or Raila, and most likely I think it's Raila, he will come out empty-handed. Again, it's something, you can't believe that.
Yeah.
So if Uhuru can get 20% for Raila, and Raila himself gets 10, 15%, then Ruto's candidacy collapses.
You see,
because he needs that vote intact.
The only problem...
Just a moment.
Let me finish.
Before you say something about the turnout, you remember the turnout, Kumira, Siafu.
Yes.
Yeah? You need that kind of people to be charged and get turnout in those numbers, and at the same time you need Ruto to bag over 80% of that. Because while things are happening to Raila elsewhere, like in Ukambani, Coast, and Western, things are not constant for Ruto also. And that's what I'm saying. All you need to remove Ruto from the political map next year is, one, Raila with his brother Uhuru getting 30-40% of that vote. I don't see that being very difficult. And number two, if the mountain is divided, you have already talked about Muturi. Number three, if the Kikuyu get a candidate and they all back him, what happens immediately? Ruto disappears. It now becomes that candidate from the mountain and Raila. And these two then go for a runoff. Because once you remove the Kikuyu vote from Ruto, he becomes number three. Raila and that Kikuyu candidate then occupy number one and number two. And then they go for a runoff. So to write off Raila, I find it a little David McCalley. Not convincing.
Haman's analysis is very good, except that he deducts factors from William and implants the Kikuyu or Mount Kenya candidate potential.
Yeah.
But he is proceeding on the assumption that Raila's backyard remains intact from 2017.
I didn't say that.
And because I did not see you minus anything from
I did. Tom was
backyard,
listening. No, let him
which is that, and that backyard came because he had NASA, which was a coalition built on a Western kind of alliance.
Yeah.
If that is going to be disturbed, if, for example, the Western component of it is going to leave Raila, where does that leave his block that gave him the almost 50-50 you're talking about? So your analysis is based on the assumption that Raila's backyard remains intact and Ruto is coming to inherit the Jubilee backyard with the potential that if he gets 80%, in fact, if he gets less than 80%, then Raila can, if he comes with his 2017 backing, will be the leading candidate in terms of the results. Yeah. But I have this feeling that the way the Oka people have dug in, and some of the things they have said, and their determination in the way they are moving is not to back Raila this time around. So if they don't back him, where is the prospect for Baba? That's my argument.
I'll answer him once.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In fact, if Muturi emerges and takes the whole of the Mount Kenya region, or even 60% of it and the rest goes, or 30% of it remains with William, and Baba, if he is marketed by Uhuru, presumptively, because I don't think that will happen, can then snatch 15% of it. You can see the realignment of the numbers. Then Baba almost shrinks down to position 3. Unless he has got the traditional backing of the West, which I suspect he will not have. In fact, the greater possibility is that the Oka people joining with Muturi, then that would be a serious bid that then vanquishes both Hasla and Baba.
All right. Wolf, based on your research, what would be the tipping scale at this particular point?
What would be the?
What would be the tipping scale at this particular point? Because, say, for example, you mentioned earlier on that there's not that drive for people to come out and vote. But you mentioned that the hustler narrative is somehow picking traction. At this particular point, what would be that one thing that would tip the scales in favor of anyone, including these candidates we're talking about?
You know, I think it's become known through my recent work with the TIFA research, that I'm working there as a consultant with my former boss from Ipsos, Maggie Herreri, who started TIFA. And we plan to do a national survey in October So you should invite me in for an interview when we've got the data. But just referring again to this one that was done by Radio Africa in July and released last week, I think to back up what Makali is saying, even in Nyanza, the old Nyanza province, Raila and Ruto are splitting that vote there, as expressed in the poll, 50-50. Raila at 39% and Ruto at 37%, which is almost within the margin of error. So Makali's assertion that Manyora shouldn't assume that the vote that Raila had in 2017, even in strong ODM areas, is necessarily there just to be picked up. Look at what happened in the Msambweni by-election as well. Now, I know these by-elections turn out as lower, but when you see also how well Ruto has performed in Central, basically getting half of the vote, whether it's an award election or in Kiamba, the parliamentary. But I think this little disagreement that my two friends are having raises an important question of, can I say, political sociology. And that is the relationship between leaders and followers. If you do a head count, say in Central today, members of parliament, I haven't done it, but it seems to me the MPs who are in the Tanga or wheelbarrow or hustler camp, whatever you want to call it, are many, maybe half. As opposed to the ones who've stayed behind the president and Raila. Now, we can say in a political system like Kenya's, where we really don't have parties based on ideologies, because the mass of the electorate are basically facing the same kinds of problems. We don't have a big debate in this country about the role of government in the economy, or even the role of religion in the economy. As we have in many other political systems, there are issues of a policy or even ideological nature which will split the electorate regardless of where they think the money might come from. Although money can also be an ideological issue. So in this kind of a political system, without wanting to say anything negative about the motivations of the political class, many of these people will go where they think the next winner is going to be. You can call that a kind of a bandwagon effect. Whether because they have a debt to that political formation and that leader or that party or that element was responsible for them getting the nominations in their current parties in the first place, or they have been promised certain things if that person wins, they're going to be looking not just at opinion polls, which I'm sure will become more numerous as we move forward, but also their sense on the ground as to which way things are going. And that, as I say, takes me back to that question. If an MP or a senator or a governor moves into one camp or the other, whether it's the Oka camp or the DP's camp, does that necessarily mean that that's how people who even voted for these people are necessarily going to vote this time? I think there's a big question mark as to how much control of the electorate on election day some of these leaders will have, no matter how many press conferences, how many public meetings they're going to have if we can get past COVID, how much they can invite people for tea and so on and so forth. The question of the control of leaders or the guidance of leaders over their electorates in a non-policy, non-ideological system like this remains to be seen, even if ethnic identity is a factor, because at the end of the day, the vast majority of Kenyans will not necessarily have an ethnic candidate of their own community that they think has a viable chance at winning. And you saw, just to finish, you saw what happened to Mudavadi even among the Luhya in 2013. He didn't even get a third of that vote. Raila got most of it. Why? He wasn't seen to be credible as enough of a candidate. So let's not make sweeping assumptions that ethnic leaders, even if they're well known, are going to get anywhere near all the vote from their ethnic communities. The Kenyan electorate is much more discerning. It's much more fluid than that.
All right. Let's bring up, I'll come to you, Prof, in just a bit, but the issue that Tom Wolf has brought up was spoken about by Moses Kuria, Gatundu South Member of Parliament. In fact, he says he's not running for any elective positions from this point on. All his focus is going to be on negotiating for the Mount Kenya leadership. This is what he had to say.
Najua nimesema mimi. Najua watu wengine wamesema najua Moses Kuria pengine ameula chama anajitafutia hii kiti ama ingine. Mimi kwanza nalitangazia dunia leo. Mwaka ujao hakuna kiti hata moja mimi nitasimama. Kazi yangu ni moja. Hii watu wetu ya Mount Kenya, mimi kazi yangu ni wakushikanisha na kuwajengea chama ambao italeta ma-MCA wote, italeta wabunge wote, italeta magavana, italeta maseneta, na itaenda kwa meza kuuliza yetu ni nini. Na kuitisha yetu ni nini si vibaya, kwa sababu yule tunaitisha ni binadamu kama sisi, sio Mungu. Sasa wale walikuwa nafikiria mimi atijui anasema hivyo sababu ya kujisaidia mwenyewe. Mimi nimesema kazi yangu kutoka saa hii ni kujenga chama, kuunganisha watu wetu na kukanyanga juu ya meza mpaka tupatiwe ile ni yetu.
Prof.
One quick question before I nyamaza.
Yeah.
I've heard many commentators over the last 6 months talk about Mount Kenya always speaking with one voice in the presidential contest.
Yeah.
As if people have forgotten 1992, where the Kikuyu community was split almost down the middle between Matiba and Kibaki. And so for people who make these sweeping statements about any ethnic group, starting with Kikuyu or Mount Kenya, speaking with one voice in presidential contests, I would ask them, what was the basis of the very, very active split between those two candidates in 1992? We don't have to get into history, but let's just not assume that even a large community like that has the president has had the presidency for most of Kenya's independence are always united at election time.
Yeah, Prof, because you know all these candidates, none of them have mentioned their running mates just yet. Do they all have to pick someone from the Mount Kenya region?
It will become sweeter when we get there.
Okay.
But before it is sweet, let's have the bitter one.
Yeah.
A little bitter. So let's dismiss a few things so that we can proceed in an orderly manner.
Yeah.
Because people are watching us.
Yes.
Let's start with Tom. Tom, please, I beg you. Don't refer to that opinion poll.
Don't trust it?
Don't refer to it again. This one of
Why?
the Star.
You don't think it's
An
scientific?
opinion poll that gives Raila 14%, that's just a joke. You know this, I always tell even professionals, including lawyers, never depart from common sense. You can be as professional, as tough as you want to be. But whatever things you do must appeal to common sense. You see, to sense, let's just call it sense.
Yeah.
So any opinion poll in this country that places Raila 14%, just throw it away. It is even more laughable.
You bring yours.
It is even more laughable. When the same opinion poll,
yes,
it's so laughable.
Scientific.
I have no financial interest in Radio Africa, but I'll defend their scientific work.
When that scientific or is, whatever it is, when the same opinion poll says Raila and Ruto more or less share votes from Nyanza, this is laughable. Even a fisherman on the shore of Lake Victoria who never went to school can just laugh at that. Anybody, even somebody around the mountain, at Raila and Ruto sharing the votes in Nyanza, that's a joke. Again, we must now dismiss something being peddled by people, and in this studio, it is being peddled by my friend David Makali, that Raila has lost his traditional support. Nothing is ever constant in an election. You lose some, you gain some.
Okay.
Now, let's debunk this issue of Western, for example. Makali comes from Western. I come from Western. He knows, like Tom has said, in 2013, Mudavadi stood. He barely got 400,000 votes. Within the Western, Raila got about 70%. In 2017, Mudavadi didn't get even one governor. In fact, 3 of the governors out of the 4 are ODM. You see what I'm talking about? That if Mudavadi stood and Raila stood, Raila will still claim more than 65% of them. 60-65%. Nothing much has changed. Now, again, you seem to be thinking you are holding things constant. If Mudavadi stands with Kalonzo Musyoka, that is a very attractive ticket. Because somebody, I think it's Tom who has said, people also assess your viability.
Yes, yes.
You see, in 2013, in fact, why Mudavadi got the votes he got, people were peddling this thing that seems Kioni was his running mate under Kikuyus were going to back him. Number 2, there's this saying that Mudavadi, the mother is Kalenjin. Of course, it's the stepmother. And you saw that because of the relationship with Moi, Gideon was going to be there. In fact, Gideon had been asked to be the deputy, but for strategic reasons, he couldn't. Then Kioni came in. So the Kalenjin were going. That's why people gave him a chance, and he got about 400,000 votes. For Kalonzo Musyoka, there was this thing that there are so many Kambas at the coast, Simba Hills, and then he was in Meru school. In fact, like he puts the Zonia River between them and Meru, so the Merus would vote for him. There was the talk that you see, it's called what? AIC, African Inland Church, is domiciled in Kalenjin land and Ukambani and these factors therefore, and Moi had a soft spot for Kalonzo and so on and so forth. If they stand today, if they stand today, they will not get half of what they got.
Okay.
And that's why I'm saying, if Kalonzo stands with Mudavadi on the same ticket, that way, now we are now in the sweeter part of the deputy. So in that arrangement, Mudavadi could be running mate.
Yeah.
And Kalonzo is on the ticket as a flag bearer. It can attract maybe 800,000, 1 million votes, forcing a runoff. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Secondly, I just want to debunk this myth that Raila has lost his. If Kalonzo stands on his own, and Raila works with Kivutha Kibwana, Alfred Mutua, Charity Ngilu, and a host of others, are you telling me Raila will not get 40–30% of Ukambani votes? Please? He would.
All right.
You see what I'm talking about?
Okay, I see.
So, but the only thing you need to understand is this.
Yeah.
My friend DP William Samoei Ruto starts as a favorite if he maintains his Mount Kenya vote. But if to go by your own analysis, David, somebody like Muturi gets 60% of the vote, that completely demolishes Ruto. Once you get 50% of the Mount Kenya vote, Ruto is lost.
Okay, let's bring in Makali on his argument on this.
Now it remains that candidate with Raila.
Let Makali come in now. Yeah,
you know, my friend Herman is downplaying a lot of things.
Yeah.
First, he even offered the explanation as to why Mudavadi performed badly in 2013. You know, there was a lot of propaganda. And you said that there were dynamics, and there are dynamics which affect how people vote in every election. In 2013, Mudavadi left the ODM code and went off to form UDF. And he suffered a lot of propaganda, that it was a state project, that he was not his own man, and he had been moved aside so that he can sabotage the bid by Raila. So he went into a very hostile environment. Yeah. And even getting the 400,000 votes was very credible in the circumstances because he didn't even have anything to hang on, and he was walking around as a very man under attack. So you cannot use that as a yardstick to say how Mudavadi would perform this time round. I can tell Herman Manyora that Western is fatigued, and take it or leave it. The support that Baba used to enjoy in the past two elections has really, really gone down. And that is reflected in the frustration by the leaders who are being asked to support him one more time. And that's why they are refusing, because they know once they support him, even their own credibility on the ground goes. And anybody can take that vote from even their own coalition if they're with Baba and they're supporting Baba. So I think that he is overrating Baba's support. And even without spending too much time on it, although I am not defending the Radio Africa poll that showed Ruto and Raila to be not too far apart.
In Nyanza, yeah.
In Nyanza. I mean, there is... Ruto has made quite some inroads into Nyanza, especially the Kisii County, Nyamira. He's got quite a bit of support. Yeah. Equally, in Western, he has made quite some inroads. For Herman to come here and lie to us that Baba's support in the West is still intact, even going by 2017 elections, Jubilee got a huge chunk of Western, you know. So, I mean, I don't even know where the credibility of that argument rests. Okay. But let me flash in, I mean, and he proposes that in a ticket of Kalonzo and Mudavadi, who should be the ticket carrier and who should be the running mate. Yeah. And he offers 800,000. Let me tell you, regardless of what we say, Kalonzo is still the main leader of Ukambani. even with the other, governors together, they will still have to fight very hard to take a chunk of votes from him. Especially if he's a candidate, no one will stand in his way. But that won't take him far because the votes won't be enough. But imagine a scenario where the West, it has Mukhisa Kituyi and Musalia Mudavadi, who have offered themselves to contest the presidency. If the Western politicians sat together and said, look, let's put our house together, we are going to field one of us for president, that would totally change the dynamics. Baba would have not more than 20% from Western, I can assure you. I don't think he can get more than 20%. Take it into the mountain region. If Muturi manages to capture the imagination of the whole mountain region, William Ruto's fortunes there will diminish. He will get some votes because there are those who will still be with him, maybe 20%. But I can assure you Baba will not get more than 10%. So the dynamics of this election are still very, very out there. And things are going to change massively as we get ahead.
I would go out on a limb in response to both of my friends here. And I don't like making predictions, but let's put it this way. It would not at all surprise me that if by the time this next election is over, and we've been able to analyze the distribution of the votes, however many candidates for president there are and whoever they are, that we see the lowest level of ethnic concentration of votes that we've ever seen in a multi-party Kenyan election. Not so much because of civic education, but referring to TIFA's poll in June, which you may have seen, we had the highest percentage I've ever seen of Kenyans, 72%, who say the country is going in the wrong direction. There's extreme unhappiness, mainly of an economic nature. A lot of it is related to COVID and the efforts the government is making to try to control it from getting out of control, especially with the new Delta variant. So we can't say it's necessarily the government's fault. But the combination of that economic situation, and you see it everywhere you go and almost everyone you talk to, combined with the fact of the handshake that brought peace to Kenya, true, but basically transformed Raila's public character from an oppositionist, a diehard oppositionist, to someone who is willing to work with and to be happy working with the government headed by the president, which was magnified by the whole BBI campaign when they were together. I think that has created unintentionally a kind of a liberation. Again, I'm just guessing, a liberation among the Kenyan electorate to free them from a lot of this automatic ethnic following. And I look at the Radio Africa poll, I take it as credible, but I would also say, let's look at 2, 3 other polls from other reputable firms in the next few months and see if that is replicated. And then maybe we convince Bonamanyora here not to dismiss and to start worshiping common sense, which is not based on facts or science. I just think that in the absence of a vibrant opposition wearing opposition shirts, that space, as many people have mentioned, has been occupied by the hustler movement. And they're tapping into that frustration. And I think that it won't completely overcome ethnic identity and loyalty. But as I say, it wouldn't surprise me that if the boundaries that we've lived in the past 5 elections under multi-party are broken to a considerable extent this time, but let's wait and see.
All right, let me bring up some feedback first, then I'll come to you and I'll mention some of the presidential candidates and ask you just 2 simple questions. Their chances and why. You're a political analyst, you will tell us what you think. Mr. T. Manyara says Uhuru factor shouldn't be undermined. He may not be a leading contender like Ruto or Raila, but he is friendly to all, less antagonistic and acceptable candidate across the country. His choice for presidency will surprise many. Okay, let's see what else you're saying here. Nyantika Chester says Baba hasn't yet declared his candidature yet, but it's very obvious that we'll have a 2-horse race between Baba and DP. That's not to say I demean or underestimate the Oka team and others. That's the utter truth. All right. See what else you're saying here. Use the hashtag NEWSNIGHT. Brian Mutiga says the 2022 race will be between Ruto and Raila. Kalonzo, Mudavadi and Moi cannot make on their own. They must support either Ruto or Raila for them to stand a chance. In Kenya, most voters vote based on their tribes. That's why coalitions matter. Okay? Sajim Kitch says, ask the three, whom do they think will win presidency if elections were done today? Professor Tom Makali and also, let's see, Prof. Tom and Makali. Okay? If elections were held today, who would win? Someone wants you to answer that. Abdurrahman Mohammed Ali says, Uhuru's succession is getting hotter. Many have shown interest, but the fact remains it's going to be one-man show to win. Must these candidates vie knowing they won't win? Or they want to be called presidential candidates? They should slow down. Okay. Tony Washira says, politics in Kenya is so fluid, things change overnight. No one can say with any degree of certainty that what will happen or not happen in 2022. It's all conjecture and suppositions, I believe. All right? So, Prof, let me mention some of these leaders, and I just wanted to answer two questions. What are their chances and why?
But you have given me half a second to
you want to respond
brush a bit of this.
Okay.
You see, I'm a teacher and I like repeating so that even slow students, slow learners like David Makali can follow. You see, I like your analysis, David Makali.
Yeah.
You give people like Muturi a chance on the mountain. You see, Ruto, let's start by that question from one of your viewers.
Yeah.
If elections were held today, who would win? No doubt, William Samoei Ruto. Handsomely. Today. But about tomorrow, we don't know. So we are talking about tomorrow. Today, it is him. And that's the basis of my argument, which I want David to follow. Ruto's candidacy and the power is sitting on a one-legged stool. And that one-legged stool is Mount Kenya. The moment you remove that stool, because he's one-legged, he collapses. You don't need more than 40% of the Mount Kenya vote from Ruto for him to go into number 3. If there's somebody else. And if there was Raila, for Raila to get 54, 55%. 35, 40%. That is the sense of this debate.
Haman, I don't want to interfere with your thought, but can I ask you, yes, where is Baba's candidature anchored? In the same manner you've explained William Ruto's.
I have said, and I can also repeat because I'm a teacher, I have said Baba still has his traditional base, but with the dynamics at play. Listen, with the dynamics at play now, it cannot be where it was at 100%.
Okay.
It dives to some places to 70%, some places to 80%, even as low as 60%. And for Ruto to beat him because Baba has received a beating in some of those places, then Ruto must maintain the mountain. You see what I'm saying? If you see that, then you see how simple it is. But again, to remind you that in a place like Western Kenya, we say Western Province, to talk of Raila at 20% is even to be ignorant about the cultural dynamics of the region. That would be Makali, you know.
Who said 20%?
You are a very bright man. You know what I'm talking about.
Who said 20%? Nobody said 20%.
No. You again misinterpreting.
The cultural dynamics alone make Baba start with more than 30% of Western vote.
No, not at all.
My friend, what's wrong with you?
The cultural factors you're referring to are and down there.
Just to help you. Just to help you. You know, common sense, Tom, is not bad. If Baba went to Kakamega, for example, and held a public rally in Kakamega, and Mudavadi was having his, Baba is in Amalemba, Mudavadi is trying to be in Bukungu. Will anybody be in Bukungu?
You see, all this is historical.
Nothing historical. Those are facts.
The past.
These are facts.
Things have moved.
Things change. I agree. There are dynamics.
On the ground, things are really changing.
Listen. I'm accounting for the dynamics. And I'm saying Raila may not get the votes he got from Western. But what I'm refusing to see is how you can wipe him out of Western. That's not possible. It is simply not possible. And this next year will happen. You talk about Nairobi here. Baba has more than 50% of Nairobi at any one given time. He wakes up in the morning. He has 50% of Nairobi.
Haman,
Okay.
Before he starts campaigning.
you're
Give Magali a chance to
misrepresenting,
respond.
you're misrepresenting the factors.
So now we can go to your question. What was your
Give
question?
Magali a chance first of all.
Just in a brief, we don't want to sustain
Then you
that
bring your
conversation.
question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Baba's support base dwindles if you have a candidature of William Ruto, Musalia Mudavadi, and Baba. Baba cannot have the traditional support you're talking about.
How does it dwindle?
I will leave it at that for now.
Okay, gentlemen,
Let's answer.
I have only 5 minutes.
You
and I need
said you want to start.
Yes, I'll
Yes.
start with you, Professor.
Yes.
Mukhisa Kituyi's chances of
Zero.
winning. Zero.
Yes.
Why?
This is Kenyan politics.
Okay, that's it. Makali, Mukhisa Kituyi,
They're low.
Pardon?
on what percentage
They
do
are
you
low.
place them?
As things stand right now,
Yeah.
unless he does some real footwork,
Yeah.
I don't want to rate him.
Okay. Tom, Mukhisa Kituyi.
There was a photograph of him in Sunday Nation with Professor Kibwana,
Yeah.
and I showed that to someone in the office, and he said to me, that would be a good pair.
Okay.
So, like a presidential candidate and a running mate.
Yeah.
So I don't want to demean
Yeah.
Dr. Kituyi's aspirations as a presidential candidate,
Yeah.
but it's far too early to know how serious some of these announcements are.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's important to put that thing in context because none of these guys really flying on their own.
Yeah.
So how they perform is also a matter of how they run.
Okay.
Right.
Dr. Alfred Mutua.
Alfred
Prof.
Mutua.
Yes.
First of all, he will not run, and if he were to run now, zero.
Okay. Makali.
Negligible.
Tom.
I have no idea.
Jimmy Wanjigi.
That's the elephant in the room.
Okay.
That is the elephant in the room. And it could be the game changer.
Okay.
He could get so
Okay.
much of Mount Kenya votes,
Yeah.
and that knocks Ruto into third place, and he goes into a runoff with Raila. Or people in the mountain could dismiss him.
Okay.
But
Makali.
you cannot dismiss me as a chance.
Jimmy.
No chance. He's a Trojan horse.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no idea. But I want to respond quickly to one
Very
of the
quick
comments.
because I don't have time. I need you to just say what you think
Someone
and we
says
move on.
that
Jimmy
the
Wanjigi.
the announced choice of President Uhuru will surprise us.
Yes.
On News Gang the other night,
Yeah.
your friend Francis Kashuri made a very interesting comment when this issue was being discussed. And he said, the main concentration of thought in an
Yeah.
outgoing president, especially in Africa, he said,
Yeah.
is that his interests be protected under the succeeding government.
Okay.
So the question I would ask, and I can't answer it, is it really for certain that it would be in Uhuru's interest to even declare who's his support if it's not clear who the next winner might be?
Yeah.
Or might it be better in his interests and those who are dearest
Not to
to him
declare at all.
to be silent?
Neutral. All right. Prof.
Yes.
Kivuta Kibwana.
Zero, but if he stands, is zero,
Yeah.
but is in Raila's corner.
Okay. Magali. Kivuta Kibwana.
Low chances. Again, depends on the pairing.
Okay. Wolf. Kivuta Kibwana. Chances.
Of helping to force the election into a runoff?
Yeah.
To keep somebody else from getting 50%?
Yeah.
As an alternative candidate
Yeah.
who has a different background from most of these other people? I think even if he gets 4, 5, 6%, that
Yeah.
could be a game changer.
Okay. Prof. Finally, Speaker Justin Muturi.
Where are the others? You have left others.
Speaker Justin Muturi. I'm running out of time, Prof. I need you to show me.
Now we are getting the juice part of the milk. and we are saying
Okay.
You already
Because
mentioned
Go ahead.
how can you slaughter an animal and you give us the hooves and the
Okay. In that case, let me take a quick break, then we'll be back with that.
You have declined the question.
Yes.